My name is Rebecca Huxley, and you can email me on the platform, or now that I'm part of your WhatsApp group, you can also message me via the WhatsApp group. Okay. So let's take a look at the agenda for today. I'll put you all over here for a moment. So I am just going to go over a brief reminder of last week's homework, because I realized that some of you have emailed to ask what the homework was, and I didn't actually reply to those messages. The reason being is because I want, over here in the UK, it's really part of study culture that we try to promote independence in learners. So you need to be independent, and during our class you need to make a note of the homework. It's very important. It's your responsibility to do that because this is your study time. But I will go over a brief reminder of the homework, and if you haven't completed it yet, could you please complete that homework as well as the homework that I set you for today. Okay. And after that, we're going to move on to looking at some reading and use of English. And for this part, we'll be looking at pages 10 and 11 in your course textbook. When it comes to use of English, we'll be looking specifically at word formation. So what the word formation we'll be looking at today is using prefixes to make the meanings of words opposite. For example, engage. The opposite of engage is disengage. So we'll be looking at some words like that in English. Then we'll be actually turning to the reading task itself, again on page 10 and 11. After we've finished with the reading and use of English, we'll move on to the speaking, specifically speaking part 1 of the exam. And we'll be looking at extending your answers and pronunciation, specifically word stress. And the homework that I'll be giving you today will be thinking about, so you'll be left with some questions and you will be expected to try to think of answers and how to extend those answers. So just going through. So last week, the homework mostly involved the listening and phrasal verbs. We learned quite a lot of collocations and phrasal verbs in our last lesson. And in the audio scripts, which I tried to get to you, but it didn't quite work out, I asked you to find some phrasal verbs. But instead of the actual scripts, it's also possible that you could just listen to the audio script again to find the phrasal verb. That is another way for you to do that. But now that I'm in your group, I can actually send you the pictures of the audio script. For some reason, only my version of the book that I have here has the audio script and not your version online. So we'll try to fix that. Now, the key thing that I wanted you to do was to write some example sentences using all 4 of the phrasal verbs that we studied last week. That was the key thing that I wanted you to do. Once we do get the scripts to you, I would also want to remind you that in the exam, the wording used in the questions are not always the wording used in the answers. So that's something else that I wanted you to look out for. So in future, when I give you some homework, you can either take a note of it or use your device to take a picture of the slide. It might be much, much easier for you to just use your phone, for example, and to take a picture of the slide itself. Okay, so we're going to start with a warmer. And just in the chat, I would like you all to type, what have you done this week to practice your English? So if you could just write this in the chat, please. And I'll give you a moment and just switch my camera off for a moment while you're typing. I've only received just 1 answer so far. So you should all be typing in the chat what you have done this week to practice English. So have you watched films? Have you tried talking to people? Have you had other online English classes? Have you read newspapers, articles in English? What have you done this week to practice your English? Okay, some really nice answers here. Thank you. Now, one of the answers I've received says that I try to read a lot in English to improve pronunciation. But if you're reading, you should also speak and listen to how the word is pronounced as well. Good. Good, excellent. That's wonderful. Thank you, everybody. If you're still typing, just continue to type what you've been doing, even if I move through the slides. There's some wonderful answers. Reading storybooks, watching movies, listening to English songs. Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you. So we're going to move on to our next warm-up. Oh, there's another chat. So listening to TED Talks and the BBC Radio, that's wonderful. Cambly. I am actually on Cambly. I know that website. I know this. It's an okay website, but it's difficult to find actual real teachers on that website, because a lot of people just think, oh, teaching English is very easy. So they're just people to have a conversation with. It's difficult to find actual teachers. It's a little bit of you just have to hope that you find a good person to speak to on there. But it is I think is it cheap for students? Is it not cheap?
No, teacher. I used the promo code from some maybe YouTubers. Yeah, they give a promo code, and you can use the promo code to like having the lesson for free.
All right. Okay, because I was on Cambly, but the pay for the teachers is way too low. So this is why I don't teach on there very often, because it's just too much work for a very little pay. Anyway, so wonderful. It looks like you have all established some very good habits with regards to practice speaking English in between the lessons, I mean. Okay, so we're going to so for another warmer, in a moment, we're going to have a look at pages 10 and 11 of your course book. Now, if you've got the course book there, you can look at your own version, of course. I will also share the page as well. And I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. So what do you think? So this is the first question. What do you think these teenagers' parents would say about each of the teenagers in the photos? Okay. So I think I will let you look at your copy instead, so that I can keep the question on the screen for you. It might work better that way. So that's page. I'm just admitting somebody into the class. So on page 10, there's only one picture, but then the rest of the pictures are on page 11. So if you look at these pictures and then just make some notes privately, and specifically, I want you to think of 4 to 5 adjectives that parents often use to describe their teenager, to their teenage children. An example I put on the slide is untidy. So you've got 4 to 5 adjectives, and if you do this by yourself, and then I will put you into pairs to discuss and share your ideas. I've received some already. It's okay, you don't have to tell me yet. Just make a note privately and then share it with your partner, And then in a little while, we'll come back and share the answers. But I like the first answer was dumb. That's quite mean. I'm now going to stop sharing the slideshow just very briefly because I would like to arrange, I'm going to begin to arrange your breakout groups. You'll be with a partner. Could you please share your 4, 5 adjectives? Anthony, I just had to move you to, okay, Anthony's gone. Okay. Hi, Ashman. So I think that you're a new student this week, right? Okay. Hi, Anthony. It's good to see all of you again. Great. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for that. Oh, yes, there is an important announcement. So Miss Wong says that there's no class next week. So we've done 4 weeks. Now we'll have a little break next week. Okay. So I'm going to, one moment. Okay, I'm just checking the chat. I want to go back to our presentation. And I want you to tell me some of your adjectives. And I'm just going to delete this box because when you tell me your adjectives, I'd like you to tell me whether or not they are positive or negative. I think that it might be easier if you just switch your microphone off and speak, please. I'm trying to open the chat. Maybe if I click down here. Aha. Okay, so someone has given me the word lazy, but where should I put the word lazy? Is this positive or negative? Just please switch off your microphone. It'll be much faster than going through the chat.
Negative.
Hey, yes. The lazy is negative. Do you have any other adjectives for describing teenagers?
Teacher responsible.
Responsible. And do you think that that is positive or negative?
Positive.
Aha, good. Good. Okay, any others? I can see more in chat.
Teacher, independent.
Good. And do you think that's negative or do you think that's positive?
Positive.
Aha, good. Yeah, I would agree with this. Good, excellent. Any more?
You're hardworking.
Hardworking. Okay.
It's
would
positive.
You say that's positive? Okay. Now, it is possible to to say that somebody is too hardworking. So it is possible for it to be negative, but generally, yes, it is said in a positive context. Okay. Do you have any more adjectives that you would like to use? So these are adjectives that I want you to have thought of yourself, so not from your textbook. So just adjectives that you have thought of.
Kind.
Kind. Okay. And I would definitely think that kind is in positive. So are teenagers kind in Malaysia? They're not always so kind over here in the UK. Okay. Can we have a couple more negative, please, just before we move on to the next exercise?
Arrogant.
Arrogant. Yeah, and that's true. Like they can be arrogant sometimes.
Careless.
Let's say one more negative, and then we'll move on to the first proper exercise.
Careless.
Can you say that again?
Careless.
Can
Careless. Careless.
Oh, careless. Thank you. Because the reason it sounded at first like you said another word, callous. So callous means it actually means something similar to care, to careless. It's someone who doesn't think about the consequences of their actions. Someone who's callous, who's kind of cold and doesn't care. So it's this is what I thought you said at first. So I thought that's a very unusual vocabulary word. Wouldn't expect you to have known that. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so let's move on to our next exercise. So this exercise refers to the exercise on the top left-hand side of page 10. So soon we'll be doing an actual reading exercise, but what's common in English classrooms, whether it's exam or general English, is that before you do any reading, you'll do a series of vocabulary tasks to kind of prepare you for the vocabulary that you are about to encounter. So we'll actually start by looking at some vocabulary, specifically some adjectives, and then we'll be looking at some prefixes as well. So I'm going to show instead to share the actual book here. So this is the exercise that I'm referring to, and I want to give you just a few moments individually to decide where these words go. So do you think that they are usually positive, usually negative, or do you think that they could be either? So I'll give you a few moments to work individually on that, and then soon you would put in pairs to compare and discuss your answers. Okay, just checking I haven't muted myself. There, my microphone is still on, that's great. So it's okay if you haven't quite finished just yet, because I'm about to put you in your pairs to compare your answers. But you shouldn't just say, I think this is positive, I think this is negative, and here's my answer. I want you to discuss it a little bit. You can say, well, I think this is positive because, or I think this is usually negative because, or maybe it could be either, and you can discuss it. But do try to discuss in English, of course, but I don't mind I don't mind you using your first language if there's a difficult concept or you don't understand a task, as long as it's brief. But generally, I would like you to speak in English, please. So I'm just going to stop share and put you in your breakout groups. I think we may have lost somebody actually. So recreate. Just one moment, I'm making sure that none of you are in a room by yourself. Move to okay, opening your rooms now. So Ashman, if you could, okay, I'm just waiting for everybody to come back. Almost have everybody. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'd like us to go through your answers now. So what I have here is a table from your book. So I'm just going to grab a word and ask you where I should put it. So this first one, pronounced strict, where should it go? And to answer this, if you could please just switch off your microphone, it'll be a lot easier and faster.
Could be either.
Yeah, I agree. I think from the teenager's perspective, it's a negative word, but when you think about parents and how they do their job raising children, it can sometimes be good to be strict. So I agree with that. And what about this word? Would anyone like to try to pronounce it?
Anxious.
Anxious. Good. It's a bit of a strange spelling, isn't it? Even for English. And where do you think this word should go?
Negative.
Aha, I would agree with that. Okay, it's sensitive.
Negative.
Okay, does anyone disagree with this? Are we all agreed? Because I imagine that some of you might have different answers for this. As I'd like to put it in could be either, because it really depends on the context. It really does. So you could be sensitive, as in easily offended, or you can be sensitive, as in more aware of your emotions. And people would think that that is a good thing. So it really depends on the context. It could be either. Reasonable?
Positive.
Yeah, I agree with that one, certainly. And organized?
Positive.
I'd agree with that. Sometimes people can be overly organized and it can become a little bit obsessive, but that's a very specific context. So generally, we'd say positive. Okay, this has a negative word in it, bad-tempered. So I think we can just immediately put that in negative. Okay, what about hardworking?
Positive.
Okay, generally, yes, generally, but there is such a thing as being too hardworking. Because if you can imagine, if you work too hard, then maybe you don't have time for your family or to pursue your own interests and hobbies. What about responsible?
Positive.
Aha, I agree with that one. Now, this one here, impatient.
Negative.
Uh-huh, I definitely agree with this one. Concerned. I didn't hear. I think this
Negative.
one is we need more context for this one. We need more context. So let's put it in the neutral category. Could be either. Because concerned in what way? There's not enough information. We need more. Okay, what about critical? Yeah, I would say it is usually negative, usually. Now, if you ever want to go to university, and especially if you go to university in the West, critical becomes something positive because when you go to university, a very important skill that you have to develop in Western culture is the ability to be critical. And the better you are at being critical, the more successful you will be at university over in the West. So in that sense, it would be positive, but generally, yes, generally it is a negative word. Impolite.
Negative.
Yeah, for sure. Unreliable.
Negative.
Ah, good. Self-confident.
Could be either.
Okay, do we agree with this? Is everyone of the same opinion? Because I think that generally it's positive, but to make it like either you would or negative, you could say that someone is too self-confident. Okay, I'm actually going to go with your suggestion. Let's put it here because it could be used as either. Generally, I'd say positive, but really we could use it to criticize someone as well. So let's put it in here just to be safe. What about enthusiastic?
Positive.
Yes. If you wanted to use it in a negative context, we could say that someone is over enthusiastic or overly enthusiastic. What about mature?
Usually positive.
Yes, good. It is. Now, just a little note, the Americans tend to pronounce this word mature. Mature. It sounds so strange for a British speaker, but we say it as mature. And our final one, understanding. Where do you think this should go?
Positive.
Yes, definitely. I completely agree with that. Okay, just before we move on to the next part, I just want to draw your attention to these parts of the word that are in red. Impatient, impolite, unreliable. Can anyone tell me why I've highlighted these this part of the word, these words in red?
Because if you remove these words, the word will automatically change to positive.
Good, exactly. And this will be the focus of part of our lesson today, simply looking at word formation in terms of prefixes and how you can use a prefix to change the word into the opposite meaning. So that was an excellent answer. Well done. So in this case, impatient, negative, but we can make it positive by just saying patient. Impolite, negative, polite, positive. And the same here. The un prefix is what makes this word negative. If we just use the word reliable without the an, it would be positive. And we'll see more examples of this throughout the class. So in the next part of our class, let me just get us to the right slide. So the information I'm going to go through with you in the next few slides are from the language reference page, page 181. So just for your reference, that is where I'm referring to right now. So as you've already said, so well done. In English, we have a lot of prefixes, and a prefix is just a small part that you put in front of a word to change the meaning. And in English, we have a selection of prefixes which change the word's meaning to mean the opposite. So we'll have a positive version of the word, and then we can use a prefix to make it negative. And there are 3 here that I'd like to show you, although there are more than 3 in English, and we'll see in the next few slides. But just to start off with, I'm showing you 3 here. So discouraged, inexperienced, unbelievable. Now, I said to you that we could just take the prefix off and then we would have the positive version of the word if we can change unbelievable to believable. However, a note about this word here, discouraged. The positive form of this word is actually encouraged. This is just one exception, because usually the spelling of the word doesn't change when you add a prefix. There are just a few exceptions, and this example is one of them. The positive of discouraged is to encourage. Okay. A couple more examples at the top here. So like, we can change the dislike. Healthy, we can make into unhealthy. So I just want you to think for a moment. So can you think of any other words in English with the prefixes above? Now, for this, I'm happy for you to just write your suggestions in the chat. Any other words in English, beginning with dis or in or un. But the words you pick have to have these as prefixes to make the words negative. So can you think of any more examples? So you've got a couple. Disagree, dislike, yeah, okay, good. So dislike was already on the slide, but disagree is a good example. Unexpected, well done. Please just type as many that come to mind, and I'll give you just a minute or two to type your answers. Can you all see the chat on my screen? So I'm looking at the chat, but I don't know if you can see or if you can just see my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, any more suggestions in the chat? Uncomfortable, that's a good one. Disadvantage, brilliant. These are all very good words that you're coming up with. Okay, someone has written independing. It should be independent. Disorder, that's a good one. So we have independent, disorder. I'm quite impressed with your example of disorder, actually, because when I first saw it, I thought, oh no, that wasn't that's not an example of a prefix, and I realized, oh wait, yes it is. Disable, disappear. A really good range of answers that you're coming up with. Disappear, excellent. Okay, we can't say unfalse. That's not that's not a word. So from the word false, the verb would be to falsify, and instead of unfalse, you would have to say to disprove. Would be a better word, to disprove something. Unfortunately is a good example. Can anyone think of any examples with in? Incredible, I think, doesn't really count as a prefix. I know the word credible does exist, but they're not really related to each other. So I don't think that this one technically counts, especially not in terms of making something opposite or positive. Invisible, good. Okay, interrupted is not an example. And neither is including. So you have to be careful in English. Sometimes we have words in English which begin with in or un or even this, but actually they're not an example of a prefix. It's just a coincidence. I know English becomes ever more annoying and complicated the more you study it. So these are all things to be careful of. So invisible was a good example. Incomplete, incorrect, very good, but not including and not interrupted. Okay, so as I said, I'm not sure if you can see what I can see. I can see everybody's answers, the chat, but I don't know if you can see that on my screen I'm sharing. But it's always good to take notes as I'm speaking and explaining things to you, of course. Okay, so let's move on to our next set of prefixes. I also want to share with you a couple of tricks to help you remember which prefixes to add. So what I'm going through with you in the slides is all advice that's available to you on page 181 as well. So if you forget some of these tips, then just refer to 181 to help with you. So for example, words beginning with L, we tend to put the prefix ill in order to make it negative. So legal would become illegal. words beginning with M or P, we tend to add the prefix im. So patient becomes impatient. And have a look at this example here. With words beginning with R, we tend to use the prefix ir. So responsible becomes irresponsible. There are exceptions to these, unfortunately. You know, in all my years of studying languages, I've never come across any language that is 100% consistent. It is just the nature of language, and every language, to have inconsistencies and exceptions to the rule. Okay, so what I'd like to repeat the activity that we just did, please, everybody. If you could type in the chat some examples of words that you can think of with these prefixes. So we're looking for ill and im and ir. So irresponsible, impatient, illegal. Are there any others that you can think of? I think these ones are a little bit harder. But if you can just type them into the chat, and then I will comment verbally on what you've typed. Illiterate is a brilliant example. Impossible, good. So I think what would make more sense is if I actually add your suggestions, because I do think that these set of prefixes are harder. So impossible. Irrespective is a wonderful one. I really like this word, actually. Irregular. Illogical. Somebody has obviously been watching too much Star Trek. So these are some excellent suggestions. Irrigation. You know what? I can't comment on that, I'm sorry, because I'm just not familiar with the term at all. I mean, I just don't know enough about it to know. I don't think it's an example because, first of all, because it's a noun. I think it's the name of a concept rather than being a negative form of an adjective. So I don't think irrigation is a viable, good example. And again, I could possibly be wrong about that. If you want to know for sure, then do type that into a search engine or to look in your dictionary. Okay, some wonderful suggestions there. Thank you, class. So a final trick that I want to show you to help you remember some prefixes is some prefixes are associated with a fixed meaning. So for example, miss here tends to be associated with something that is understood wrongly or badly. So an example is to misunderstand or possibly to misinterpret. And anything with RE, so words with a prefix RE, usually means to do again, and it tends to be added into verbs, so to do an action again. So you'd expect it on verbs, to write, to rewrite. And just for your information, if any of you decide to ever learn French, French has the exact same prefix to mean the exact same thing. Just in case any of you are interested to know. Okay, and English as well. So inter, so final example. This means between or among. So to interact, to act between or among people. Okay, so again, could we repeat the activity? Are there any others you can think of? Don't worry too much if you can't think of many examples of inter. That's something you can look up later. But can you think of any examples with miss and re before these two prefixes? Redo. Yeah, okay, brilliant. Okay, some excellent suggestions here. I will add them for everybody, just in case you can't see the chat. We do misuse, misbehave, retry. Yeah, restart is a very good example, Anthony. Excellent. I think I've missed recycle. Yes, recycle. Yes, international is a really good one. Well done. Remix and reuse. Great. Good. Okay, good class. Excellent. You've done really well there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, oh, got another really good one. Interactive. So I'm going to move on to our next slide now. Thank you, everybody. You've done a really good job. And I think what we're going to do now is let's take our break now. So could you indicate in the chat whether you would prefer a 5 or a 10-minute break? Because I don't feel like our lesson has been too intense so far. So maybe, okay, so someone has said 10. Okay. Everyone wants 10 minutes. Okay, fair enough. So let's come back here at approximately 13 minutes past. So I'll see you all in 10 minutes. I'll switch my camera and microphone off in the meantime. When you're back and ready to start again, just switch your camera on. Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, hi everyone. Well, we'll just continue. So what I want to do is I want to put you into pairs now, and with your partner, I'd like you to complete task 2 of the book. So I'll just very briefly share so that we all know exactly what we're doing. So task 2, you're taking all of these words that you put in the table beforehand. Oh, sorry. These words here, sorry, my mistake. Not as many as this box here, down here under this box. My mistake, sorry students, sorry everybody. And if you could please use one of the suggested prefixes in order to make the words opposite. Now, we've gone through some tips to help you, but remember that their exceptions do exist. Okay, so this is the exercise 2, and I'm now going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to put you in with your partner, and you'll have a maximum of 5 minutes to do this. Okay, that's everybody back. Excellent. So I'm just going to ask you here in the main room for your answers. So concerned, what prefix can we use to make that?
Unconcerned.
Unconcerned, very good. And what about enthusiastic? Any ideas for enthusiastic?
Enthusiastic.
Can you say that once more? Okay. I think I heard unenthusiastic, which is correct.
Unenthusiastic.
Unenthusiastic, good. What about mature?
Immature.
Good, excellent. That is the exact answer. And organized?
Unorganized.
We can have 2. There are 2 possibilities. We can say that somebody is disorganized or unorganized.
Unorganized.
Yeah, we can say either unorganized or disorganized. Okay. What about reasonable?
Unreasonable.
Unreasonable. Okay, so I was worried that some of you would use because I said that there were exceptions to the rule, because in a previous slide I said words that tend to begin with an R usually have er in front of them, but reasonable is an example of an exception. It's unreasonable. Okay. And what about responsible? It's a bit of a difficult one.
irresponsible.
Good. It's irresponsible. Excellent. And sensitive.
Insensitive.
Perfect. Insensitive. Exactly. So I'm going to share the presentation again. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So the next slide I have is some information about the reading. So I'm going to leave you here just to read through this yourself, please. And then I will show you all this information in the book. So please read through the information in this slide. Okay, so has everybody finished reading through this slide? Because I'm about to stop sharing the presentation slide and I just want to show you the actual exercise in the book so I can point out where everything is. Well, I will stop sharing. Now I would like to share the book again. Okay, so the reading that we're referring to today is on this page, on page 10, called Surviving Teenagers. And you can see here that there's something missing, and it's just labeled 1. And again, this paragraph, there's a sentence missing here, labeled 2. So in the reading task, you have to read the entire article carefully, and your main task will be, in the exam I mean, is to decide which of the following sentences that appear after the reading fit in the gap here. And so we'll be practicing this in a moment, but before that, I have another exercise I would like us to do, and it's exercise 5. What I would like you all to do individually is I want you to read the article within your book. And I want you to, just for now, ignore the gaps. I just want you to make a note of the main idea of each paragraph. And you can see an example of the first paragraph has been done for you. So the first one is treat teenagers differently from before. So I'd like you to work on this individually, and then I'll put you in pairs to compare your answers, to compare and explain your answers, okay? So page 10 of your books. Okay, so has everybody finished this exercise, or do you need a little bit more time? Okay. Because what I would like to do, just because we're running a little bit short on time, I'd like to just, instead of asking you and putting you into pairs, I'm going to show you the answers to this exercise. So because the main idea has already been done for you in paragraph 1, the answers start here from paragraph 2. So could you let's compare these answers to your answers. So the second paragraph was all about trusting teenagers to behave responsibly. The paragraph after that, the main idea was brain development and scientific findings about teenage behavior, negotiation and compromise, and concentrate on your goal. Now, I just want to point out that in this this reading that you just did in the textbook, you've seen that there are many words and phrases that are underlined. The reason for this is because it's your first time with this kind of reading task, and so certain words and phrases have been underlined to help you. But in the exam, this will not be the case. There will not be any words or phrases underlined at all. Okay, so the reason why I gave you those answers instead of asking you to provide them is because I want to move on to the main exercise, which is task 6. So this is actually doing the exercise. It's the main reading task itself, and this is what you would have to do in the exam. So the exercise we just did, where you identified the main idea, that's not an example of a task you would have in the exam. The purpose of that was to help train you and to give you a good strategy for what to do in the exam. So a good strategy in the exam is to read through the text and identify the main idea of each paragraph. Now we move on to task 6, which is actually what you would be doing in the exam. So as you can see, as we've already discussed, 6 sentences have been removed from the article, and you have a choice from A to G of which sentence you think fits within those gaps. So just to point out as well that there is an extra sentence within the choice from A to G that you don't need. So you can use the underlined words and phrases that I just mentioned to help you. Now, once you've done this, we will be comparing answers together. But what I just want to do is to go through the first one with you. So I will stop sharing my presentation, and instead I will share the textbook. So, sorry, my keyboard is a bit sensitive. So if I could just ask you, just give you a minute to just reread this first paragraph before I tell you what the answer is. Okay. Now, this information here has been underlined to help you to pick the answer. So the answer here is G. So I'm now going to go down to sentence G to reveal what it says. So sentence G. Imagine if you'd spent 2 hours getting ready to go out for the evening and someone said, "You're not going out looking like that, are you?" So this is the answer to this one, but you shouldn't just listen to me giving you the answers. You should be asking yourself, okay, how does this sentence fit here in this gap? How does this sentence make sense? So if we have a look at the sentence afterwards, it says, "You'd be very upset." So you have to think, well, the information that here has to describe something that would upset you. You'd never say that to an adult because it shows a total lack of respect. So you know that you're looking for a sentence within the selection that describes an act that would make someone upset and that is disrespectful. So this is why you have certain sentences in this text underlined. It's to help you to try to determine which sentence it is that's missing. Okay, so now that we've done that together, I'm going to give you, let's say, I want to say around 5 minutes. But I think in 5 minutes, I will ask you if you're done, and if you need more time, you can have it. But what I would like you all to do individually is to decide which sentences fit within the rest of the gaps for each paragraph. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'll give you about 5 minutes to do that individually, and then you can compare your answers with a partner. Okay, so good luck, everybody. Okay, have you completed, or do you need a little bit more time? If you could just indicate in the chat if you say done or need more time. Okay, so we have a mixture. So some need more time, some are done. So as per usual, what I do almost every week for our lessons is that I plan too much, and I have my agenda all of the things I want to do, but we won't have time to move on to everything. But that's okay, because we have time together, and there's a lot to get through. We have a whole book, and so that's not to worry that we haven't managed. We may not be able to do much on speaking today, as we do only have 10 minutes left. But that's not to worry, because we could start next week with speaking. Certainly, I want to do writing with you next week as well, and then to give you a writing task. I think for some of you, maybe writing might be the one that you are scared of the most. But I do want to say that writing is actually one of my favorite things, aspects of all the 4 skills. And so I will be looking to help you as much as possible with your writing. Okay, so whether or not you've finished, so if you've got a couple more that you haven't done, that's okay, because I want you to discuss with a partner your answers, but you should explain why you think that's the answer. So we'll do that for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to the breakout rooms, and I will show you the answers very quickly. Okay. Oh, wrong button. Okay, sending you all to your breakout rooms now. So please discuss your answers and explain your reasons why. Thank you. For those of you already here in the main room, just please compare your answers. So these are the answers. Okay, so hey everyone who's just returned to the main room. As I said, I'm just going to very quickly show you the answers. So if you could please compare your answers to the actual answers here. And it was sentence D that was not needed in the end. And I'm sorry for rushing us, because I know normally I would spend much more time with the answers, but I just want to make sure that we finish going through enough today so that I can set you with some homework, because I want to very briefly introduce some speaking to you as well. Okay, so please make a note of those answers. If your answers are not the same, then what you should do is you should revise the reason why. So for instance, you should go to your book and have a look at the actual answer as stated here on this slide and try to see, okay, that makes more sense because my answer is wrong. Why is this sentence better? And that would be a self-study task for you to do to help you to improve. Okay, so I'd like to just as briefly as possible introduce the speaking exam to you. Sorry, no, I'm on the wrong slide. Speaking part 1. So I just want to give you some very brief information about the speaking exam. And then I just want you to listen to let's see how long it is. Then I'm going to leave you with some homework. Okay. So on page 15, you have a little information box, and this is all about speaking part 1. And what I want to do is to just introduce you to a little bit about the speaking part 1. And in our next lesson, we'll have practice with this, and we'll look at the word stress as well that I mentioned in our agenda for today. So as I said, I often plan too much. And it's very typical of me that I overplan way too much in my lessons. Okay, so what I want to say is that because in speaking part 1, the examiner will ask you very general questions about like you, your hobbies, interests, your family, or even your neighborhood. And because of this, it is possible for you to predict what kind of questions the examiner is going to ask you. But what I do want to say is that I want to say that you should not. So even though the questions that the examiner will ask you are predictable, you should not pre-prepare your answers. So that's this point here. Do not pre-prepare your answers, because your examiner is very experienced and is trained to be able to know, to recognize when a student has just memorized their answers. The point of speaking part 1 is to assess you on your ability to speak spontaneously. And so if you don't speak spontaneously, then the examiner simply cannot assess you. And that is just a simple math. That is the truth of the matter. So your answers should be spontaneous. And the other note I want to make is that you should really avoid one-word short answers, because you'll be assessed in your ability to express yourself grammatically, fluently, and with an appropriate range of vocabulary. So you should use longer sentences and more than one sentence in your answer. So this is just my general advice I wanted to pass on to you with regards to the speaking part 1 of the FCE exam. Now, we don't have enough time to listen to the audio, which is what I wanted to do next. So I've been told that you have all now received the audio files. So I'm just going to share with you which audio file it is. Aha, here we go. So you should have been sent the audio files already by the admin of Tuition King. And the one you need to click on is labeled 3, Unit 1, Speaking Part 1, Exercise 2. So this is the one that I would like you to listen to as part of your homework, okay? And then I will show you what else you need to do for your homework. But this is the file that you need to click on and listen to, the audio file, in order to do the following exercises. So I will show you which exercises those are now. So as homework, could you please make sure that you listen to this audio file? And in the first instance, I want you to decide whose answer do you think is better and why? So that's the first thing that I would like you to do. And for the rest of your homework, I'd like you to go through and complete exercises 1, 3, and 4 on page 15. In addition to that, any of you who did not complete the homework last week, of course, this doesn't apply to the 2 new students today. You don't have to do the rest of this. Please just do the listening. But for those of you who have been in the classes so far, please complete the homework that I set last week as well. So just to reiterate, to repeat once again, your homework is to listen to the audio file that I showed you and to decide which answer is better and why. Do exercises 1, 3, and 4 on page 15, and any of the homework from last week that you didn't do. Now, today I've been added to the class WhatsApp group, and I have already shared pictures of the audio script, because as I say, for some reason the audio scripts are only in my physical copy of the book, not the books that the Tuition King have for some reason. So that's why I've had to take a picture of it for you. Okay, everybody, so what I do want to say is that I know in our lessons together, we tend to cover a lot more material, and usually I speak a lot more if I'm giving you advice and so on and so forth. And normally I would go through the answers with you in more depth and explain why this is the answer and why that's not the answer. And there hasn't been as much of that today, simply because I'm not feeling very well today at all. So I do apologize that we haven't gone through as much material as we normally would, but hopefully today has been a little bit more relaxed for you. And don't worry, next week we will, the week after, because we have a break next week, of course, we will continue where we left off. We will finish the section on speaking and begin the section on writing, and then hopefully for the next lesson we'll move on to Unit 2. Okay. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? Remember that you have to take a note of homework or a picture of what the exact homework instructions. Okay, so if none of you have any questions, then you're free to just leave the class. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. And I may share some pictures of the snow with you in our group chat. So please, everybody, have a very good weekend. So I've sent a private chat to one of you to ask you to stay at the end of the class. So just make sure that you've checked your private chat. Everybody else, please feel free to just leave the class, because we're finished for today. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.